one of 60-hour-long sessions we have through Friday, February 23rd. I'm Kira Monks, and I'll be your moderator for the session. Today's session is assessment strategies aligning learning competencies to innovative assessment options in today's online environment. The presenters will be David Dixon and Allison White. David Dixon has an MA in education, EPIC project team leader, course developer, adjunct faculty member, quality assurance peer review, Southeast Kentucky Community and Technical College. Allison White, associate professor, office administration, program coordinator, Ohio University, regional higher education. Without further ado, let's get started.
Hello, everybody. I am David C. Dixon, and in this session, you are going to discover online course assessment examples which demonstrate the path from learning outcomes to successful, well-matched assessments that meet course goals and ultimately institutional accreditation requirements. So if my computer will cooperate, we'll move on. So as I mentioned, I am David C. Dixon. I work for Southeast Kentucky Community and Technical College, which is part of the Kentucky Community and Technical College system. I serve as project team leader for the Enhancing Programs for IT Certifications program. I also serve as a course developer, adjunct faculty member, and quality assurance reviewer.
Hi, as Kara said, I'm Allison White. I'm associate professor, and I wanted to emphasize that I'm on a regional campus of Ohio University, one of the 5, which is Chillicothe. So I'll be bringing a little bit of a perspective from the regional campus point of view and the main campus point of view that hopefully will appeal to many of you. And that's me.
So at this time, we're going to ask just a few questions to kind of get a scope of our audience. So if you don't care to use the chat box, let us know if you're faculty, a program coordinator, instructional designer, administration. I see a lot of people typing. We've got some faculty, instructional designers, adjunct, librarians, administration. We had one person reply that they're all. I feel like that I'm all of the above. We have one group that has all of the above, some remote instructors, quality assurance program manager. Great. So now let's move on to the next question. How many of you all work with program level outcomes and accrediting bodies? Okay, looks like a... Okay, ask the question again. Who all is working with program level outcomes and working with accrediting bodies? So we have some people that haven't yet, some that are, some that have before, some work indirectly. Great. So thank you guys for kind of giving us a scope of who we have in our session today. As you can see on the screen, we're asking you to follow us on Twitter using our session hashtag outcome assessments. If you have any questions, you can feel free to pop them on Twitter, or as you can see, I'm checking the Twitter feed on my phone periodically, or you can type those in the chat or unmute and ask during the question and session answer, or question and answer session, if I cannot get tongue-tied today. So moving along.
David?
Yes.
Well, I'll just add that for those who said that they weren't working directly with accreditation, you will get plenty of information about course design and delivery and helpful things as a faculty and instructor today. So don't tune out because there's plenty of cool things to come.
Okay, so on your screen now is an overview of our session goals. We have 5 goals that we hope you'll take away from this session: to learn an understanding of the research-based methodologies used in learning outcomes and assessment process, synthesize to the ways in which outcomes and assessments must align, assess the usefulness of active online learning environments in meeting outcomes and successful course assessment completion, demonstrate how the methodology will aid students in successful completion of course assessments, and understand the importance of utilizing these educational practices in the achievement institutional accreditation. And before I move on, please make sure that you have your mics muted. Getting some feedback. Okay, so now you can kind of see here accrediting bodies and learning outcomes. Program and course learning outcomes for students must meet. My school is accredited by SACS. Competencies is evidenced by requirement in 3.3 institutional effectiveness, 3.3.1.1 educational programs to include student learning outcomes. This is evidenced by each assessment relating to the student learning outcomes set forth for the course. This is also evidenced in 3.5 education programs, undergraduate programs. 3.5.1, the institution identifies college-level general education competencies and to the extent to which graduates have attained them. In addition to course-specific student learning outcomes, each course also has general education competencies which are embedded in the course. And I'm going to let Allison talk about hers.
Our accrediting body is the Higher Learning Commission. You might be familiar with its former name. It was formerly the North Central Association of Colleges and Schools. And we use what's called an AQUIP, or Academic Quality Improvement Program pathway, which means that we self-evaluate and we use this AQUIP method to maintain our accreditation with HLC. And because we use that, that kind of puts us in good graces with them because they know that we're constantly working on action projects to help us maintain accreditation. And primarily with the HLC, they make us follow 5 criterion, which involve a mission, integrity, teaching and learning quality, teaching and learning evaluation, assessment, which is what we're going to talk a lot about today, but we'll touch on these other things, and then institutional effectiveness. So that's OU. Let me see if I can advance, take over here a little bit, David. Yeah. Okay, so let's start with the basis for everything that we're doing. We are using research-based assessments. We, of course, use Bloom's, and I think many of you are familiar with the lower order and higher order thinking skills that come with Bloom's and the verbs that we use to create our not only course outcomes, but also program level outcomes. We also follow a KIRKPATRICK'S model for assessment, and that gives us 4 levels to evaluate the assessments that we are using in our program. And then we also use the Association of American Colleges and Universities HIP practices, or high impact educational practices. And we're going to touch on those in examples as we go through this, but as tech programs, David and I both have technical programs. HIPS is really an important factor, and we do incorporate the AACU's methodology there. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about some of those schools. Back to you, David.
Okay, you get your movies on demand, you get your TV on demand. Why not get your education on demand? With the state-of-the-art online education that you'll get through taking courses at your own pace through the Kentucky Community and Technical College System Learn on Demand platform, you're able to have a flexible nature with multiple start dates that lets you quickly acquire the skills you need to earn a promotion or professional certificate, or you can earn a fully accredited degree, certificate, or diploma. With Learn on Demand, you're free to pick the courses that meet your educational goals. With Learn on Demand, you'll never have to rehash material you already know. If you can test out of a parent course, you'll earn credit for that same course at the same tuition rate without doing all of the coursework. We call it credit for prior learning. You'll call it awesome. So you may ask why I give you a background of Learn on Demand. Well, Learn on Demand is utilizing credit for prior knowledge, credit for prior learning through competency-based assessments. So moving along, we utilize a modular approach. With KCTCS Online, classes are divided into course modules, that is, bite-sized chunks of full content. A completed module earns credit, and credits build to certificates, diplomas, or degrees. This is the foundation of the modular approach and a core benefit of KCTCS Learn on Demand. So now let's talk about some assessments. Students who can demonstrate that they are already proficient in the course module or parent course competencies will receive credit for the module or course without having to complete all of the course requirements. Once enrolled in a module, all students will be required to take a course pretest. Those that demonstrate mastery of the course pretest will then move on to the credit for prior learning exam. The CPL exam may include special projects and/or assignments from the course modules. Mastery of the CPL will equate to modular credit earned or course credit earned and a grade received, thus cutting down on the time to complete a course. So this is giving you an example of a flow of a module. You'll see that a course will start out with a pretest, then utilizing adaptive release. We use the Blackboard learning management system, so these courses are heavy on adaptive release. If a student makes a 90 or above on a pretest, it opens the credit for prior knowledge exam. If a student makes a 90 or above on that credit for prior knowledge exam, then they've completed the course. Sometimes there are assessments that are not included in that credit for prior knowledge exam that a student will also have to complete some mastery. If they make an 89 or below, then they work through the module work. So this helps students be able to complete things a lot faster if they're coming in with already background knowledge. The flow of a full course works much like the flow of a module. You'll start with a comprehensive course pretest. You make a 90 or above, you get the credit for prior knowledge, credit for prior learning exam for the course. Make a 90 or above on that, then you have successfully completed the course. So you can kind of see the flow here. How does that relate back to learning competencies and assessments? Well, all of our comprehensive course pretest, post-test, credit for prior knowledge exams are aligned to certain course competencies, which we're going to take a look at. So, busy working adults need the flexibility that only KCTCS Online can offer, and with self-paced learning, it is another unique benefit. With KCTCS Online, students not only choose from multiple start dates, they complete their courses on their own schedule by the end of the term. Most KCTCS Online modules are completed within 3 to 4 weeks, yet students can move through at a quicker pace. The modules are built for individual, and module completion is not dependent upon group work or traditional semester-based schedules. To help students complete the modules quickly, course facilitators provide 24-hour responses to emails and 48, 72-hour responses to submitted work. Finally, there are no limits on the number of modules a student can enroll in at any given time. Students may enroll in the number of modules that are unique to their schedule. So all of the assessments for this are very student-centric in that they're geared to teach the students knowledge. So what is competency-based education? A form of assessment in which students are asked to perform real-world tasks that demonstrate meaningful application of essential knowledge and skills. An authentic assessment usually includes a task for students to perform and a rubric by which their performance on the task will be evaluated. And as you can see, there are many different definitions of competency-based education, but some of those essential components are competencies are explicit and measurable, students advance upon mastery, and enables personalized learning approaches. And as I mentioned, we often see, especially in my programs, I work with medical information technology and computer information technology. We see a lot of people that come in that have worked already in the field but may not just have that piece of paper to show that they have the skills. So this works well for them. So how do you make authentic assessments? Well, we use a 4-step process here at Southeast Kentucky Community and Technical College and throughout KCTCS. Those 4 steps are: identify what you want your students to demonstrate and be able to do. Identify the criteria for the task. What does success look like? Select the task standards to perform or produce in order to demonstrate success. And finally, create a rubric to measure performance on the task. We use what we call a course planner to start developing our online courses. Instructors and course developers will use the course planner to develop the course learning activities and assessments. This helps to guide through the development of innovative assessments for the course. Each competency is very broad, and then it is broken down into more concise student learning outcomes. The learning competencies stem from the overall program learning competencies. So within a computer and information technology, we have overall program competencies that are then broken down into the course level. So you're looking at an example from CIT 151, which is Social Media 1. Competency number 5 for the course is explore the advantages and disadvantages of social media technologies, which is then broken down into 2 student learning outcomes. Students will explore the advantages of social media technologies, and then students will explore the disadvantages of social media technologies. So throughout this, students are going to complete a web-based quiz to show mastery of the content. So moving along, you can see an example in CIT 151. The very first step is we have to have those competencies and outcomes. So there are 5 competencies and outcomes for Module 2. And then we create an authentic assessment, which is linked to a real-world example. For example, here students are going to complete a case study using TurboTax and how the company was affected by using Twitter. What are some pros and cons of using Twitter? Very real-world examples. For example, in this course, students are asked to review a case study, and then they're going to answer questions. This means steps 2 and 3. Okay, someone has their mic caught. If you can mute that, please. Okay, so finally, after an assessment is created, then we create the rubric. Organization, level of content, grammar mechanics, style, format, development. And as a student is working through the case study, that rubric is available for them to be able to formulate their response.
David?
Yes?
I think we need to ask Kira to mute people if they're not muting themselves, because we don't have control over that. Can she hear that?
Yes, I can. I will go through people now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead, David. Sorry to interrupt.
No, it's fine.
Okay, so moving on. So here are some sample program level outcomes for our computers and information technology program. These are just the first 4 out of many. Use a fundamental computer literacy knowledge, including concepts and basic productivity software packages. Use a graphical user interface when working, knowledge of at least 1 operating system. Install and use and maintain system software and application software. Analyze, design, implement, and document simple applications. So you can see how this has been broken down for a computer class. For example, the competency is import word processing and graphic files from other software application programs and producing camera-ready publications. So if you go back and look at our sample program level outcomes, you can see that that meets standard number 3 and 4. So in applying Bloom's here, the student is going to have to be able to understand and apply knowledge of how to import files from other applications into the desktop publishing application. And in order to assess the student, we've created an objective-based test that covers that topic. Another example, plan and implement instructional needs assessment given a specific population of users in a healthcare setting. This is an example of a student learning outcome with assessments from our medical information technology program. In using revised Bloom's, the student is asked to analyze the learner, task, and situational characteristics that that population may have in a healthcare setting. And again, a student is completing an objective-based quiz and needs analysis assignment. So I've seen a lot of things in the chat, so I'm going to open that up and see.
Someone asked if you had percentage of people who've received credit for prior learning, and I did mention to them I thought you had some stats later, and someone also asked about the hyperlinks, and I thought that URL you have is the only one we have.
My understanding, there's no hyperlinks on my slides.
Yeah, there's a URL to something. I don't know whether you were taking them to a web page at KCTCS or not. But they can copy and paste that. Other than that, I don't think we have any other hyperlinks.
Okay, so I don't see, I do have some stats, and you asked specific credit for prior learning, credit for prior knowledge stats. I wish that I did have some stats on that. That's something I've asked at our systems level. Again, we're a part of a 16 college-wide community and technical college system. I don't have specific stats on credit for prior learning, but I can say that it does work for certain people. I've had some people that have tested through modules in the courses that I facilitate, as well as I've had some students that have tested through the entire course. Students do pay for the credit if they test out of the class. So they still pay our full tuition. Some students may test out of the course, but then they decide to work through the course. For example, in our medical coding class, just last week, we had a student that passed through the course. She had prior knowledge from using ICD-9, but she wanted to learn ICD-10, so she's going to work through the course. So it just depends on the student. So, like I said, some people just want to come back so they can get that piece of paper. So I'm going to move along to some Learn on Demand student successes. Our pass rate is nearly 85%, and I will note this is overall with all of Learn on Demand. We have certificate programs, we have Associate of Applied Science programs, we have Associate of Arts, Associate of Science. End of course evaluations and student satisfaction surveys confirm that students appreciate the flexibility of our program and find that this type of online learning is more compatible with a busy lifestyle. So I was afraid that a lot of students would not like this heavily assessed system, but they do. And they like the different types of assessments, which we're going to talk about a little later. I'm going to turn it back over to Allison.
Okay, thanks, David. I mentioned earlier when David and I were discussing our accrediting bodies, and ours is the Higher Learning Commission, and I thought that we should really start at the beginning with a mission. So you need to go back from the courses that you're teaching and from the programs that are developing and really go back at the core with the program, with its mission, before you can set your program goals and your learning outcomes in the courses. So this is just a brief look at the one for the Office Administration Associate degree at OU. See if I can advance here on my own. Thank you. Okay, and here are our program level learning outcomes. So I'll just briefly go through a few of these. Identify and apply, those are those Bloom's verbs. Communication skills, then you'll see define, interpret, apply, and those are about our technology and software applications courses. And then quantitative skills, we want them to be able to apply those as well. And here's where our analytical thinking and problem solving comes in, and we kind of transition to higher order thinking in the program. Those are 2000 level courses for the 2-year degree. Then we have the administrative skills and procedures. So we go from introducing them, identifying them, to applying them, and then illustrating them. And then define and apply. Here's where the ethics part comes in to the program, which is also one of the 5 criterion from the Higher Learning Commission. And then at the end, we have identify, apply, and explain leadership, managerial, and organizational roles. So that's a quick peek at the program level outcomes for the 2-year degree. Now let's talk a little bit about one of the research theoretical perspectives that we use as a basis for our program, which is the KIRKPATRICK'S model. This model originated more of a training at the corporate level, but we are teaching business classes, and it certainly fits very well with OA and creating our assessments and looking at our assessments and analyzing if they are effective. So let me go to the next slide. So KIRKPATRICK'S model has 4 levels. Level 1 is to what degree, and I've added students to this. Remember, this is adaptable to business as well, but to what degree students react favorably to coursework and apply that knowledge. And we, in the OA program, do that through group projects, discussions, field trips. Then level 2 is about to what degree the students acquire that attended knowledge and skills and attitudes, and to get their confidence and commitment from the program. And that comes from the portfolios they create. We use those throughout the program and in our CAPSTONE course, and writing across the curriculum. And then at level 3, to what degree students apply learning during their degree program. This is their behavioral level. And you can see that in internships, the alumni input that we get from our advising committee, and survey results. And then finally, level 4 is about results, to what degree those targeted outcomes occur as a result of the program. And this is really about looking outside of the courses, and we'll get feedback from the internship site supervisors who evaluate the students. The students test for Microsoft Office certifications outside of the university, and they also test for civil service exams. And this is how we see if our degree program has been effective in helping the student obtain real results in the real world. David?
So we do some of the similar things throughout the KCTCS system and here at Southeast with level 1 reaction. All of our students are primarily online, so they have a lot of real-world type projects. Instead of going on actual field trips, we try to embed some virtual field trips in there, and then they complete on-site or virtual practicums. Level 2, with their learning, students are required to create portfolios, complete capstone courses and projects through their capstone course, and then some classes require them to keep a portfolio from beginning to end, depending on the program. Level 3, behavior, we do the internships, and then we do a lot of follow-up through surveys and things for our programs to ensure that students are getting results, which ties into level 4. All of our internships, if they're doing those either virtually or in person, does have site supervisors that do evaluations. The virtual internships has it built in through the system. They're doing the virtual internship, or if they're going out into their school systems or into our clinics or hospitals, those site supervisors are doing evaluations of the students. Built into the courses, whether it's CIT or MIT, students will be taking the NOCTI exam either during their employability studies course or throughout their capstone course. And then a lot of self-assessment is also built into the course. And back to the survey results, which goes into behavior and results, a lot of these students are taking national certifications, whether it's the A+ exam, Cisco exam, medical coding, electronic health records, AHEMA exams. We're asking them in follow-up surveys to give us if they've passed those exams or even if they've taken them. You'll see a lot of people will just come and take the courses and then get jobs, but may not necessarily take those national exams. So that's things we need to know. So moving along.
Okay, so I think you've gotten a glimpse at some of high impact educational practices that we're using, but I'd like to explain what those are in a little more depth. The AACU defines those. Here we see a few snips of things from our LMS and different items that we are doing in our classes, but let's define high impact educational practices. So They are projects and collaborative assignments, and for OA, that might be our ergonomic assessments, where we actually go into office settings in our community and do assessments of good ergonomics in the workplace. Practicums and internships are another high-impact practice. Common intellectual experiences. This would be that combination of technology and society, and that theme runs across our OA curriculum with application software components. First 5-year seminars and capstone projects. So I don't know why I said 5. First-year seminars. And we don't have a first-year seminar. We do have an entry seminar, and then the exit seminar is where our capstone project is. So we are doing that HIP practice. Writing across the curriculum and writing intensive courses. We do writing in our BCom class, our technical writing in our ergonomics class. We do portfolios, blogs, undergraduate research, and this is in addition to what they'll get out of the general education courses where they're writing. So it is emphasized across the OA curriculum. Diversity and global learning, so access to student clubs, university activities, and a diverse faculty are very important to us at OU. HIPs provide confidence that program courses, whether they're traditional or online, will meet requirements of accrediting bodies. And one of the 5 criteria certainly covers that diversity among many other things through here. Okay, so here is a little glimpse of some OA assessments. You can see one of the students' capstone projects here on the left, and this is a fully hyperlinked presentation that can be turned over to an employer afterwards so they can see artifacts from the student's experience in the OA program. On the right, we have some flow charting from our information systems design course where we do ergonomics. And then again, you can see there where they're using Microsoft Visio to do a full office ergonomic assessment. Here's inside our LMS, we use Blackboard. They're blogging, using discussions, and doing wikis. And here is a glimpse of what the portfolios look like. I mentioned earlier that we use electronic portfolios for our capstone course so they can do their capstone project. But we also incorporate portfolio evaluation in many of the courses. And these can be electronic or they can be paper, depending on how the student takes the course, traditional, blended, or online. But these 2 examples here are the McGraw-Hill campus on the left, which I just wish we still had because it really had a nice interactive personal touch to creating portfolios embedded in Blackboard. And on the right, you can see the Blackboard journals journal option, and we use that for portfolios now, which is great. I don't know how closely you can see it, but here is Alex's portfolio for word processing, and the introductory paragraph is about the goals of the portfolio and Alex's career goals. And then you come down and you see explanations of what the student learned with hyperlinks of what the student created as an artifact for that course. These can be downloaded, zip filed, and the student can again take this with them for interviewing. Back to you, David.
Okay, so throughout KCTCS, as I mentioned, we use a lot of capstone courses and projects in a lot of our technical programs. So I'm kind of showing you an example from our medical information technology capstone course. You can see some of those course competencies, student learning outcomes of this course. Capstone courses and projects, whether they're called a senior capstone or some other name, these customizing experiences require students nearing the end of their college years to create a project of some sort that integrates and applies what they've learned. So in this course, they're kind of creating an internship. They're going into an internship. The project might be a research paper, a performance, a portfolio of their best work, or an exhibit of artwork. Capstones are offered both in departmental programs and increasingly in general education programs as well. So throughout this course, not only are they compiling what they've learned, they're also going out into an internship. Internships are another increasingly common form of experiential learning. The ideal is to provide students with direct experience in a work setting, usually related to their career interest. For example, here they're going into clinics and things to show that they can do these competencies. And to give them the benefit of supervision and coaching from professionals in the field. If the internship is taken for course credit, students complete a project or paper that is approved by the faculty member. So again, this relates back to what we've talked about. While they're out in those internships, they're getting evaluations from their site supervisors as well as the instructor. So moving along, the MIT 295 course is delivered completely online. However, students do have the option to complete their practicum internship either virtual or in person. And as you can see, there's the requirements for a virtual practicum and the in-person practicum. If they're doing it in person, the student is responsible for finding their practicum site and scheduling the visits on their own, and the students must complete 120 hours at their site to complete the in-person practicum. Students must submit their work-based learning agreement training plan, so they develop a plan, their bi-monthly employer assessment timesheet, and work-based learning student assessment to receive credit for the practicum. Now, if they're doing it virtual, they're working in a simulated administrative medical office practicum skills for medical assistance textbooks. And you can see there, they're doing 100 simulated assignments that equals to 60 hours total. So MIT 295, not only that capstone course, not only gives them a virtual or an in-person internship, it prepares the students to take the NOCTI exam, which covers several learning competencies aligned to higher order thinking, in addition to being an example of a high-impact educational practice. The example covers a wide variety of questions and topics to ensure that students are capable and prepared to do the jobs in the medical information technology program that program has prepared them for. And I know that's a little hard to read, but the written assessment of the NOCTI exam is 2 hours, and they have 103 questions. So they're asked things from academic foundations to systems to ethics and legal responsibility, communication, information technology applications, and so forth. Also critical thinking, decision making, employability, and career development. So this kind of just gives you an example of an assessment that they're going to be asked if they're doing a virtual internship on communication skills. They're using the content that they found under their learning outcomes to review that content, then follow the directions to complete the assignment. This also goes back to talking about working in groups. Often when you're in an online setting, group work, especially with their Learn On Demand format, can be kind of hard, but they're often given a lot of scenarios where they may be working in groups. And then you see they're also writing 3 pages, which includes the cover page double space to get the writing across the curriculum. So this gives some examples of some questions they're asked, the multiple choice questions they may be asked on the NOCTI exam. So this just shows you inside CIT 151 Social Media 1, we utilize Blackboard. Most of the time we utilize a lot of the things that are already in Blackboard. So for example, the course pretest would load you into a LMS creative test through Blackboard. Again, some of our classes do not utilize Blackboard for everything. This is a CIT 248 class Visual Basic 2. You can see they're completing journal assignments, lab assignments. They've got reinforcement videos for the chapter, some matching to make sure students are understanding key terms and so forth. And then you can kind of see an example of a question. So now I'm going to turn it back over to Allison.
David, a question just popped up there for you about your last assessment, and I was going to ask if anybody has questions about any of the HIPS practices we're using, so feel free to ask now if you want.
Okay, so the question was, do the pretest and test out tests comprise of only multiple choice questions? No, they do not. Often The pretest may be only multiple choice, true, false matching, but the credit for prior learning exams will often include short answer. For example, in one of the CIT classes that I teach, students actually have to go into PowerPoint and be able to produce a PowerPoint to show that they know how to do the certain skills in PowerPoint. It's the same with all of the other programs as well. The credit for prior knowledge exam is a lot more in depth than just the pretest. So sometimes you have students that will get a 90 or above on that pretest, but they will not get through the credit for prior learning, credit for prior knowledge exam. Another question, if the student doesn't pass the assessment, are they still charged tuition? So the way that it works, if a student doesn't make a 90 or above on that assessment, then they complete the course. So they're going through the course. And the way the assessments are set up in the course, if they're just the regular chapter quizzes, module quizzes, or module post-test, the students are able to take the assessments as many times as they want to make a 70 or above. Now, usually, like, for example, in my classes, I only allow the students to take those assessments 2 times before they have to do remediation.
Okay. So feel free to go ahead and pop questions up in the chat. As one of us presents, the other one will, watch the questions. And these are great questions. Please don't hesitate to interrupt. We have plenty of time. I would like to move on to how the accrediting body criterion can trickle down through a couple of OU programs and the program outcomes, the course learning goals, objectives and outcomes, and end with the assessments that we're using. And I have 2 examples here. One is the associate level OA program that I've been using as an example. And another one is the master's level, Masters of Science in Nursing. So I know we had at least one other person who was teaching at the master's level that might appreciate this. And I think it makes a good comparison of regional campus setting, main campus setting, graduate level course, associate level course, and it'll give you a little bit of an idea of what we're doing in the way of assessments. So. Okay, so again, research-based, we're using the IRMA program, or the IRMA method, which is introduce, reinforce, practice, mastery level, M, and A for assess for program level outcomes. And this comes as a modified version of Nichols and Nichols from 2004. Forgive me, I'm going back and forth between 2 screens. So the first one I'll show you is the nursing program, and you can see here that 2 of their outcomes from their program. Then the curriculum map, I've pulled off of that and shown you how IRMA works with their courses. So you can see that they introduce this outcome in Nurse 6110, they reinforce it in several courses, they master it in 2, and then they I forgot what it was. They analyze it and assess it in that final course. So the method of assessment is in the far right column, and that talks about the actual assessment, which in this case is a case study paper for Nurse 6923. And you can see the graduate level expectations there of 90% of the students will get an 83% or higher. So you've got that A, B only situation in grad school. And you can look the rest of this over yourself, where you can see discussion board assessments, projects, and the meeting that learning outcome of analyzing healthcare policies to enhance and improve population outcomes. Again, throughout several courses, they work to meet that outcome. Okay. Now we'll take this back. Oh, I might have hit that twice. Yes, I did. Here's OA, and you can see 2 of our program level learning outcomes, and then you can see how we are introducing them and reinforcing them and mastering and assessing them throughout several courses. And then on the right, our criteria is that 90% of the students, and that's really high for a non-traditional regional campus setting, will receive a 74% or higher, because our program requires a 2.0 for graduation in the core and across the entire degree program curriculum. So here's there are two of them here. You can see the courses that we use, and you can also see the different assessments, whether it's a filing kit exam, whether it's a paper and a presentation. We do those ergonomics diagrams that I showed you before, portfolios, inside and outside assessment. You know, the outside assessment is part of that final assessment. Now, if we come back to nursing, they go one step further, and I managed to get a snip of how they did that final evaluation of their program in 14-15. I think they had that 7-year evaluation, and they really dug into what they were doing in order to provide information to the accrediting body. So their case study paper, they met that goal that 90% of the students received an 83% or higher. In fact, they met all their goals. And you can see all the assessment instruments that they used. They're really big on surveys. They've got a good mix of indirect and direct assessments there. And the criteria of the A or B was all met. There's really a delay when I hit that. Okay, now if we come back to OA, I'll show you our assessment instrument in our 2300, our BCom class as a portfolio. And our criteria, if you'll remember, was 90% of the students getting a 74. And I took fall 2017, which is really recent, course offerings, and 58% of our students earned that 74% or higher. So I put that in yellow. That's a flag for us. Then if you look at our entry course and you see the research paper that they do on careers and the presentation that they make, 100% of the students earned an 88% or higher. So that's a great outcome for us. And again, this is just a look at a couple and what's coming out of this. I will say that, again, you need to look at the regional campus setting versus the main campus setting. You need to look at the expectations of a regional campus 2-year degree program and our students who are 40% non-traditional, and that's been higher in several years. Right now we have a large military population. There are a lot of factors, but I'm not making excuses to say that this number isn't very meaningful to us, and that we will be doing things to look at those assessments and see what we can do to help students be more successful in that. Are there any questions about the program level assessments and these charts that I just showed? Okay, David, I think we're good.
Okay, do we have any questions? Okay, so we had one question on Twitter wondering if any of this work was influenced by any authentic assessment or PBL principles and work.
And that would be from what I just presented?
Well, the question came in about a minute ago. So I think overall, authentic assessments is something I've heard about my entire career, even back to when I was in high school. I think from my perspective, when you're working with computer information technology programs, medical information technology programs, you can hand somebody a book and say, study this book all day, but you're not going to truly know if someone knows how to do the work without giving them project-based, authentic type assessments.
We have several courses that incorporate projects. They might do a group project in one course where they're looking at the flow of a process. They're looking how ergonomics affects that, and then they're looking at the business itself. And so that's just one course. Yeah, we are using projects for sure.
Okay, a question came in. Are you incorporating e-portfolios into your assessment models?
Yes, yes. I have the one example of the e-portfolio. We use those in all 4 of our courses that primarily focus on spreadsheets, word processing, presentations, and databases. And then we use it in our CAPSTONE. And we are using the Blackboard Journal feature right now for e-portfolios. We're not going to an outside website. We used to do that and let the students pick those. On the CAPSTONE course, though, they are creating primarily using Microsoft PowerPoint to do their CAPSTONE electronic portfolios from their degree program.
There's 10 minutes remaining.
Okay.
Allison, that's a question for you. How do you pinpoint what improvements will be made when the achievement level 90% of students pass with 74% is not met?
They said the 90%, or were they referring to the 58%? I didn't see the question.
It says, how do you pinpoint what improvements will be made when the achievement level 90% of students pass with 74% is not met?
Oh, okay. Okay. So that is kind of referring to that 58%. So as a program coordinator, I'm actually the only full-time tenure track faculty in my program. There are a couple of other what we call Group 2 year-to-year contract and a lot of part-time adjuncts, but we're still pretty close-knit even across the 5 campuses in a wide area of southeastern Ohio. And so that's something where we will sit down as a group. We will incorporate our alumni and our advisory board, and we're going to look at, in that one instance with the portfolio for business communications, you know, writing, grammar, that's a big thing. That's why we're reinforcing that across the curriculum. So there are many factors in the rubric for the assessment of that, and it can be writing, it can be using the technology tool, or it can be actually learning the concepts of indirect and direct communication, good news and bad news. So we'll need to look at what factor students are failing on in the rubric of that. So we'll be drilling down and we'll be doing it as a group. I don't do it in a silo. Does that help?
Okay, so it looks like we have about 7 minutes. Do we have any more questions? Any more comments? Well, on the screen we have put up our contact information, Allison White, and there's a Twitter link for her program Twitter, then also myself, David C. Dixon. And that is a Twitter link for my program as well. You can also find me on Twitter. I post lots of nonsense and lots of good things too, so feel free to follow me if you would like. Feel free, if you have any questions, if you would like to see some more of these things one-on-one, to reach out to us via email. This is kind of how we got invited to this conference. I think the organizer had attended a session we done at the Online Learning Consortium, and we've changed it up a bit. Feel free, if there's more things we can elaborate on that you think would take a little time, to reach out to us. I actually had someone reach out from when we done this presentation before and was able to give them some groundwork to start some of this work. And we'd like to thank you all for attending.
I will add one more thing. Someone asked where this would be posted, the recording or maybe a PDF of it. And I had said that maybe Bob or Kira or somebody could answer that, because I don't know the answer to that. Cassidy, I think maybe.
I'm not sure. I just know that it's on cloud. That's all I know.
Okay.
Yeah.
So perhaps if you do want a copy of it, you can contact us later and we'll ask Bob that question and get the answer for you.
Okay. Okay. So I'd like to thank our sponsors for helping make this conference possible, Video 360 and Zoom. Their contributions are much appreciated. Thank you to all of you for attending the session, and thank you to David C. Dixon and Allison White for this wonderful presentation.
Thank you for helping us today.
Yes.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody for coming.